Alrighty, yo! I gotta get a little energy for me after following that act. Can you empathize with me? Like, whoa, come on. You guys have been amazing. By my count, it's been 3 days of mind-filling education, 3 nights of late-night partying, and 3 7 a.m. yoga sessions, and you're still all here, ready for more. All right, so I'm Lex Sisney, and so you know a little bit about me. My background, my former career, I was the founder and CEO of one of the world's fastest-growing companies. And that experience taught me so much. But one of the biggest lessons I got from that is I struggled to scale that business until I figured out my organizational design. Once I got my design right, then that business really took off. That experience of failing and struggling to scale up my company, then changing the design and having it take off, really ignited a fire in me to teach that concept out in the world. And so today I run a coaching practice. I work with CEOs all around the world who are scaling up, and we collaborate together where I design and implement a new structure. And the result is scale, right? And all that comes with it, increasing revenues, increasing profits, faster execution, better cross-functional coordination. So I get to see a lot of cool companies. I also see a lot of misinformation out there. And so my goal of this talk is to equip you with a way to kind of cut through the noise and think about your own organizational design. Now, as leaders of companies, let me see a show of hands. How often, who's thought about their organizational design recently? Is it right? Is it suitable to scale, right? You should be thinking about that as a leader, because design is everything. Design controls behavior. And if you want your business to do something new, then you need to change its design. So, let me frame up the question you might be thinking like this. Should you run a top-down or bottom-up organizational design? There's a lot of debate out there about this. So to choose a top-down design means that you're at the head of the organization. And you and your management team control most decisions, and then delegate implementation down into the rest of the organization. Are you with me? If somebody down lower in the organization wants to take initiative and do something new, they first typically need to go to a manager for approval, right? Well, the bottom-up approach is a little bit different. The bottom-up approach purports that no hierarchy is necessary. Instead, we want to unlock the creative potential of your team and allow them to make decisions and get the work done. The top-down approach on your left is typically called hierarchical. The bottom-up approach is typically called self-managed. Now, as leaders, I imagine you oscillate. You ask yourself, reflecting, am I delegating the right things? Am I controlling the right things? Who reflects on that? Okay? Exactly what you should be doing. I want you to notice in our culture right now, though, that there's a tension between these two camps. You guys feel that? Like the self-managed bottom-up camp is very much gung-ho, and they look at the top-down hierarchical camp like they're evil almost. You guys feel that? But as leaders, you're also oscillating between these polarities. What should I delegate? What should I control? Now, both camps, the extremes of both camps, if you get out on the far edge of each camp, you'll notice there's some fear there. Okay, anytime there's a contrast of ideologies, it leads to fear, which leads to separation. And so maybe some of you can empathize with this fear of the top-down camp, which is, you know, as a CEO, I imagine you have a fear, like if you delegate too much, anarchy and chaos will reign, right? So here's a white-collar set of managers, and they're walking by, and the guy's gardening at his desk, right? Their fear is that if they delegate too much or delegate the wrong things, that they'll quickly lose control of the organization. Chaos, entropy will reign, right? The organization will cease to fulfill on its purpose. And so they look to centralize most decision-making. The bottom-up camp, though, has a different fear. Their fear is that if there's any manager, any boss, that'll create cultures of disempowerment, bureaucracy, disengagement at best. At worst, it'll create tyrants. Right, so here's a picture of a dictator. Let me address your concerns by having you all arrested. Right? So can you feel the fear and the polarity from both camps? So you might be asking, what's the right camp to be in? Should you be more top-down, or should you be more bottom-up? Now, if you pay attention to popular culture, you get the strong suspicion that the bottom-up camp is the right camp to be in. You've probably seen headlines like this. Quartz, Zappos is going holacratic. No job titles, no managers, no hierarchy. You've seen some of those articles? Forbes, man, do we even need hierarchy? Right? Bloomberg, it's time to kill the 9 to 5 and let your staff set their own work schedule. Entrepreneur Magazine, 4 reasons you should let your team set its own salaries. You guys have seen some of these articles, right? So you get the sense that the cool kids are in this camp of the self-managed, hierarchy-less organization. Even bestsellers. These are 2 of my favorite recent bestsellers on this subject. The one on your left is called Reinventing Organizations. The author is Frederick Laloux. And he went off on a hypothesis. He said, well, if the leading edge of human consciousness is evolving, that must mean that new organizational designs are emerging to support that leading edge. So he went to study companies like Buurtzorg and AES and Patagonia, Zappos, et cetera, and he did a study about what makes these organizations different. And he was looking for some pattern recognition so that readers could take his book and then apply some of those same principles to create a more self-managed organization in their own company. And I contrast this book with a different industry. This book's called Team of Teams. This book is written by General Stanley McChrystal, and it's fascinating because it's a self-managed approach to the US military. Okay, the US military is the prototypical top-down hierarchical organization, right? So his experience was in Iraq. He made it to the top, right? He became a general in the hierarchy. Then he took command of the Joint Special Operations Services in Iraq during the 2003 al-Qaeda invasion. And he showed up in that environment kind of acting like a command and control dictator. And he felt very confident at first because US military superior training, resources, weaponry, satellite intelligence, right? The best of the best. So he was pretty surprised when al-Qaeda was kicking our butt. And his experience was they were just too nebulous, amorphous, leaderless, lack of hierarchy to actually fight. So he had to come up with a change, a transformation in the US military to better adapt to that new threat. So 2 very interesting studies of the self-managed, hierarchy-less, allegedly hierarchy-less organizations. So I'm here to share with you the truth, though. Okay? Whatever you might read and get excited about in the media, it's all usually a bunch of crap. Okay? The truth is that every high-performing, self-managed organization is really a top-down hierarchy in disguise. So that means the most seemingly leaderless, egalitarian, set your own work schedule, set your own salary, choose what you work on organization, if it's thriving, behind the scenes is actually a hierarchy, and there's a leader at the top of that hierarchy designing things to act that way. One of the reasons I can give you evidence for this is the fact that the purpose of structure isn't to control. Okay, the purpose of structure is to delegate. Think about your own business. When you were a early stage startup and you didn't have any employees, right? You couldn't afford to delegate anything. You didn't delegate anything. It was all on you. As your business grew and became more complicated, you hired more people, suddenly there was a need for structure. The reason you had a structure was you had the need to delegate, right? So the purpose of structure is not to control, it's to delegate. It's to push authority as far possible down into the organization. A lot of managers and leaders mix this up. I think they look at a hierarchy and they think, rather than how much can I delegate, they think how much can I control? And that might be one of the reasons that top-down structures have gotten a bad name. But if you look behind the scenes, every self-managed organization is designed by a hierarchy and a leader. And this takes me to my concept, a term I use, it's called Design-Centric Leadership. And what I mean by design-centric leadership is just what it sounds like. Rather than trying to be the best player in the game as a leader, you design the game for others to play. Design-centric leadership applies to both top-down and bottom-up hierarchies. Okay? This is a picture of Settlers of Catan, a board game that I love to play with my family. Now, think about it in your own role as a leader. Most of us in the room, we thrive at being the best player, right? Being the smartest, most creative, best player in taking risks, using our intuition, using our analytical capacity, and being the best player. Design-centric leadership requires you to make a shift to where you focus most of your time and energy on designing the game for others to play, your staff, your employees, etc. And it's that mindset of designing the game for others to play that allows self-managed behaviors to emerge. If we were to create a little conceptual map, what I'm saying is that you are the designer, and you're designing the game for others to play. How do you do that? Well, you're mostly relying on your own communication, your relationships, and your influence, and you're asking questions. How well aligned is my organization with a changing environment? How well does our vision and strategy fit with that changing world? That's your external environment. And you're also asking questions and reflecting on your internal environment. How well is my culture and functional structure aligned to support that strategy? You make sure that your cross-functional processes are working well. And once you've designed that architecture, you give tremendous autonomy to your staff to design their own work processes and get the work done to the best of their own ability. So rather than playing the game, you're focused more and more on designing the game for others to play. Even Frederick Laloux, the author of Self-Managed Organizations, recognized this truth that the secret to self-managed organizations is you, the leader, the designer. He wrote, "An organization cannot evolve beyond its leadership stage of development. When a teal company," this is the next generation company he was studying, "changes leadership, they revert to more conventional management practices and not much remains of their pioneering style." What fascinated me about this book was he lamented that fact. He lamented that there needed to be a leader, a designer, a leader as designer in the organization in order for it to function as a self-managed behavior. And he asked the question in the book, how can we get rid of the leaders? How can we have self-managed behavior without the leaders? And what I'm encouraging you guys to do is that's a red herring. Okay, don't pretend the hierarchy doesn't exist or that leaders don't matter. The hierarchy does exist and leaders do matter, and it's you. The book, Team of Teams I mentioned, they published this little graphic in the book. And I want you to pay attention. They're trying to make the case that the hierarchy changed in the military under General McChrystal. They portray the journey of Teams like this, that when he first took command in 2003 in Iraq, it was a command and control style of hierarchy. He realized that wasn't sufficient in this battle with al-Qaeda, so he made the change to more of an integrated command of different teams, interdependent teams. But that wasn't moving fast enough and agile enough to meet this new threat, so he changed again, okay, to where suddenly the hierarchy appears to be gone. Now it's a self-managed emergent behavior of a team of teams. You see that? Okay, there's an alternate story, which I believe is more accurate, that should have been published in the book. And it's this. In stage one, General McChrystal showed up as a traditional command and control style of leader. It wasn't working. He had to adapt. So he shifted his leadership style to a command of teams. That wasn't enough in that changing environment, so he made the full-on shift to what I call a design-centric leader. Now, doesn't it look like the hierarchy changed in the picture? Doesn't it look like there's no hierarchy, doesn't exist? Guess what? The hierarchy's there. It's the same command and control, the same levels of decision-making. What he did, he put tremendous amount of effort and energy into breaking down silos, creating the culture of transparency, pushing authority and decision-making down into the organization. The hierarchy didn't change. The leader at the top changed. Broke down silos, increased communication. He essentially designed the military for the soldiers and the analysts to play in, to thrive in. Now, it's not an easy journey, right? Here's this quote from the book. "The move-by-move control that seems so natural to military operations proved less effective than nurturing the organization, its structure, processes, and culture to enable subordinate components to function with, quote, smart autonomy, end quote. So this is a challenge for you guys. Now, I get to work with a lot of different companies, and I help leaders make the transition to more design-centric leadership. And I have to say this, if you're looking for a handbook to follow or a book, you're out of luck. Every situation is unique. Every leader is unique. Your company's at a different life cycle stage. So you really have to figure this out with your own initiative, right? Your own gut level sense of what this business needs at what time. I do see in every organization I work with 3 big challenges. They're really requirements to unlocking more self-managed behaviors, but they're also huge challenges, and they're real. The first, your mindset. Okay, most of us as leaders, we start where General Patton is. Lead, follow, or get out of the way. And even if you're putting on a nice face in your company and pretending that it's all okay, don't you sometimes feel that in your gut? Like, come on, guys, let's go, right? Feel that tension? Well, feel the tension, too, in making the leap to the next, this other stage, which is the leader's first responsibility is to the whole. That was General McChrystal. You feel that tension? I got to say, if you don't want to make that leap, don't even try. Right? You don't have to make the leap in order to have a thriving, scaling organization. You'd only make the leap if it was part of your DNA and you felt it was necessary for the organization's success and growth. It's very hard. What do you do with all the energy and passion you put into building the business? Where do you put that? Right? Hard challenge. Next big challenge. If you're going to have more of self-managed behaviors, you have to have full transparency in the organization. So the self-managed camp, you'll hear a company say, we trust people. Because we trust people, they give us our best. We trust people so much, they set their own salaries. Yay! Okay? Look deeper. They don't trust their people. They've built a system of transparency that creates trusted behaviors. So if you're going to have staff set their own salary, you need to do a lot of things. First, you need to publish everybody's salary. All the team's performance need to be available. The team needs education on how to read financial statements. The company's targets need to be published. A huge investment in transparency. The book Team of Teams, a lot of it is about General McChrystal's drive to create transparency in the military against top secret clearances and old military silos. This dude had infinite, imagine being the general of the US military in war. Okay, blank check. And then imagine you have the power to dictate whatever transparency system into the organization you wanted to in a command and control architecture. That's a pretty good deal. That took that guy 3 years and countless hundreds of millions of dollars to build a shared consciousness in the military. You have to make payroll. Okay? So don't take it lightly to trust people. If you're going to make that shift, you got to have transparency. You got to build transparency into the fabric of the organization. Very challenging to do, but a requirement. Third, final challenge. As leaders, there's a battle in your company between of being efficient and being effective. Efficiency is about centralized control, right? Processes, data, aggregation, systems, yeah? Effectiveness is about trusting and creating autonomy and flexibility and freedom. There's a battle waging in your organization. And it's between these two things, because if you have more of one, you have less of the other. What's really interesting to me about more self-managed organizations led by a design-centric leader is that leader spends most of their time defending against encroaching efficiencies. So here's an example. Nordstrom. You guys have heard the mythological story of Nordstrom's, right? It was founded by Edward Nordstrom. He had a vision that he was going to unlock the entrepreneurial potential out there in his company. So he had a one-card, one-sentence employee handbook. Guys, use your best judgment. If you have any questions, ask. Right? You see how effective that is? How he's taking risks and allowing for a lot of autonomy, right? Through a culture of reinforcement and transparency. Nordstrom's today, they've lost the battle. I did a search. They have a 7,500-word code of conduct, okay? Now, I guarantee if you're the CEO of Nordstrom's, you try to play off your heritage. Hey, guys, welcome aboard to Nordstrom's in your new career. We were founded on a note card. Use your best judgment in all situations. That's how we want you to perform. However, sign the 7,500 employee page of conduct, right? So we can really trust you and protect our ass from being sued and liability, right? It's hard. But a design-centric leader makes, like with big cojones, says, no, I'm going to take some risks. I'm going to allow for more autonomy. I'm going to allow for more effectiveness, and I'm going to defend against encroaching efficiency. So I asked you a question at the start of this presentation. Should you run a more hierarchical or self-managed organization? I want you to take away that it's a false question. The real secret is to be a design-centric leader. Architect your game for other players to play. Lead by design. If you like this thinking, I want you to write down organizationalphysics.com. You find lots of articles, tutorials, videos, and books. Appreciate your time. You guys have been awesome. Go get them.